Prospect House Media.
And now, prepare yourself for the only weekly podcast you won't want to miss. Welcome to the Ameritocracy Show with Troy Edgar, live from our studios in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C.
Hey everybody, I am Troy Edgar and welcome to the Ameritocracy Show. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. It is greatly appreciated. This podcast examines the conditions for personal and professional growth and opportunity across America. This week on the Ameritocracy Show, I'm in Washington, D.C., where I sat down with Ray Shieh, Quantum Senior Product Marketing Manager at IBM, for a fascinating conversation on the rapid development and advancement in quantum computing. Ray shares his journey from leading cybersecurity efforts at Microsoft, both in Taiwan and Washington State, to his current role at IBM, where he specializes in post-quantum cryptography and quantum-safe computing. Ray discusses how he leverages his marketing and cybersecurity experience to explore potential quantum applications and highlights the importance of quantum-safe cryptography in safeguarding data from future threats. I hope you enjoy. Ray, welcome this morning. How are you doing?
Doing good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. We've been spending the whole week, this last week, with the Army at the big Army conference here in Washington, D.C. How's it going for you?
It's going great. We're showcasing quantum and talking about some of the features and capabilities. A lot of people are really interested in our chandelier. It's nice and shiny, so they're kind of moths to the light. So a lot of people are getting interest, and I'm really excited about sharing that information to the world.
Yeah, what's interesting is I will just say in the tech industry where we're at, we are in kind of there's three different areas. The way I break it up is
right.
the tech is software, hardware. I'm in the consulting side, and then there's the research side. And the thing about IBM is they kind of cover off all three. And
right.
But you and I have been, for the last year and a half, working together, doing a lot, on the imminence part of really getting out our capabilities and talking to audiences. This week we're with the Army.
Right.
But, in the Army conference, 40,000 people coming through there. So a lot of action. You and I were walking back about 6 or 8 months ago. We were in Huntsville, Alabama. And we were walking, and after we got done doing what we were doing at that conference, we were in the airport together. We just happened to run into each other, and I said, Ray, how's it going? And you gave me some insight of what was going on with your side. And then I started asking, I felt like I had my own private time with you. I thought, it'd be so awesome to have you on the show to talk about quantum in the way of more a simpleton view, just to kind of give people, my audience, they're not the complete insiders within, the technology industry where they're like following every step of quantum or AI. So what I'm trying to do is to take these types of topics a little bit more higher level and kind of go through. So Ray, I'm really looking forward to, you remember our discussion in the airport?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I was just kind of rushing to my airline and then relatively new, had no idea. And then you came up to me like, oh, wait, I saw you at the booth. So it was really good to kind of connect and talk to you about like what you're dealing with from supply chain side and from like what clients are talking to you about. And then kind of sharing my insights in my little world of quantum and quantum safe. So it was good conversation. I remember that fondly.
Yeah. Ray, what I was hoping to be able to do is to have you just give the audience a little bit about your background. I think your career in quantum and what got you into this, now you're one of the best companies out there and you're doing this, but you've had a really interesting career, if you wouldn't mind talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll preface by saying I had zero physics. I have zero insight into science and technology. I was focusing on a marketing background and a finance background. So I started off at UC Irvine, University of California, Irvine, on doing a business administration degree, focusing on finance. I went into like financial investments. And then from there, I just realized I was more of a marketer. I wanted to be not behind the computer. I really wanted to be talking to people. So started doing a marketing role in my MBA at Claremont Colleges. From there, after my MBA, I got into a product marketing manager role at Microsoft, but in Taiwan. So my family has been in Taiwan. I've never worked in Taiwan, and it was kind of still a cultural shift, even though, I am part Taiwanese. But working in that culture and working as a PMM at Microsoft, you kind of understand this nuance of how do I properly strategize products. I started leading cybersecurity in Microsoft Taiwan. And after COVID, I was transitioned to Microsoft HQ in the Washington state area to lead cybersecurity. From there, I stayed at Microsoft for about 5 years. I started looking at other ways to transition and talk more about cybersecurity. And I had this opportunity to work on post-quantum cryptography, which is thinking about quantum safe, thinking about what happens to our society once quantum computing comes, how much impact does that have, and kind of having a cybersecurity conversation around it. So I had a lot of transferable skills, and that's how I got into IBM and started leading this role in discussing and sharing about quantum.
So can you talk a little bit about the role that you have within IBM and kind of what takes up your day? Because I know you're on the road a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a PMM, product marketing manager, actually, we're focused on kind of the go-to-market strategy for a specific product. We're evangelists for the products that we represent. But I wanted to expand that a little bit more when I got into this role. I think I'm so focused on messaging or content creation, but I haven't really talked to anybody about the content we're producing, right? So from a strategic standpoint, my goal was to essentially understand what customers and clients are really thinking about, and then what my sales team is working on, what their challenges are, focus on the actual product development itself, the roadmap, what are the features and capabilities, and then focusing on the marketing side. So that's also why I'm more on the road, is because I like to think of my role as more of a supporting role, and how do I understand the market to elevate the people that I work with. So that's kind of the fun of this role, where I have that flexibility where I can see and take product marketing and go in a direction that I see to be a little bit more fit for my skill sets.
It's interesting. So I've seen you in action, hand-to-hand combat. You get a lot of really hard questions, and some of them are basic. There's no doubt, but some of the different things that we go to have really hardcore tech people, and
Right.
so and it's funny is like. I'm always like sitting there waiting to see if you get stumped at some point.
Right.
If I have a few minutes, I go over there and kind of listen in. But talk a little bit about quantum. Give the viewers a little bit of an idea of what we're really talking about to kind of paint this picture.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about quantum, and I'll be a little technical first, but I'll try to reel it back and talk about what's cool about quantum. When we're talking about quantum, we're really thinking about quantum mechanics. And what that really means, and I'm abbreviating here, is that we're manipulating atoms, right? We're at that point in time where we can actually we have the science and the technology where we can manipulate the movement of atoms. And what does that mean for society? How does that change our communication? It's still all theoretical, but from a physics perspective, we're getting so granular into everyday life that we're making those changes. Now, specifically on quantum computing, the idea, the concept of quantum computing is that it will be able to solve a lot of the problems that we couldn't solve before, mathematically, but also by analyzing data so quickly and giving giving scientists so much data and information as fast as it can, we can solve things that we couldn't do before. So, for example, the theory is that we can actually accelerate communication faster than the speed of light if we were able to actually solve or crack this quantum mechanics. So it's unfathomable how impressive this technology is.
Yeah. So when you look at the like quantum computing, and if somebody walks in, and a lot of people, again, I'll just speak for the general public. It's like a lot of people will walk in. Even for me, being from IBM, there's kind of a couple things we're known for: the AI, quantum computing, and probably moving stuff to the cloud.
Yep.
And so when you talk about quantum and the actual physical computer, can we talk a little bit about from an IBM? If you and I were sitting there looking at the chandelier that everybody is fascinated by, what is the benefit of that when people are looking at it and they're trying to kind of draw a conclusion?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with the chandelier, that giant box with the shiny objects, a lot of people are asking me questions about, what is this? Why do I need this? Or how do I get access to this type of technology? The quantum chandelier is just a very glorified refrigerator. And probably my marketing team will not like me saying that. But the actual chip itself is about that big. It's the size of like what we typically print as a logo, right? So it's a very small chip. The rest of it is a coolant. So it's pumping a combination of liquid nitrogen and liquid helium throughout the entire system to keep it extremely cold. And just a fun fact for the audience as well, how cold are we keeping it? We're keeping it at less than 1 degree Kelvin. So it's like negative 480 something degrees Fahrenheit. We are almost 100 times colder than what people would experience in outer space. So very cold. And what happens at that temperature? 3 things, really. Number one, this machine is very hot. It's processing billions upon billions of data points in split seconds. So it's going to overheat if it's not that cold. Number 2 is that the machine will actually rattle and it will make a lot of noise. In an enclosed space that's vacuum sealed, all noise frequencies only get amplified. And so when you're keeping it at such a cold temperature, the noise frequency is almost stagnated, or it's almost flat. And then finally, it's for optimization purposes. By keeping it so cold and maintaining that temperature, the typical question we get is, this will cost a huge amount of electricity. This is not sustainable. Surprisingly, what we find out is when you keep it at such a low temperature, it's actually easier to maintain. So we don't need as much electricity. We don't need as much utility cost for that type of product. So what does that all do? The power of the quantum computer is that it can essentially calculate data faster and simultaneously. So the easiest way for me to think about this is, let's take, for example, a rainbow. Now, we know a rainbow has 7 colors, or that's what we tell our kids. What happens if you have a rainbow combined with another rainbow? That combination of colors, right? 7 factorial. Red plus red, red plus orange, red plus yellow. That's what a traditional computer will do. What a quantum computer will do is take all 7 colors of both the rainbows, combine them, and give you exactly all the different combinations at the same time, right? The at the same time is the most important piece. Now, for us, we know that a rainbow actually has 100 different colors. So what happens when you take a combination of 100, multiply that with a combination of 100? Right? A normal traditional computer might not be able to solve that quickly. A quantum computer will solve that instantaneously. So that kind of processing power allows us to have practical applications as well. So the next question that typically people will ask is, this device is so cool, but why would I use it, or how would organizations use it? And what they're hinting at is quantum computing still future tech? Is it still sci-fi? Is it still, what I see in the movies? And the answer is, we actually have quantum computing in the world already. Like for IBM, we have over 300 clients that are already working with us on quantum computing. So for example, a shipping company says, hey, I want to reroute my ships from point A to point B. How do I focus on fleet optimization? Very easy to do if you're focusing on 10 ships, but let's take it from a global perspective. The organization we work with has 100,000 ships, and they need to think about, there's a hurricane, or the bridge collapses, or the Suez Canal gets plugged up. I don't know what my competitors are doing. I don't know what my supply chain is doing. I want to take all of these factorizations and reroute 100,000 ships at the same exact time. right? So that's kind of some practical applications. Research and development. So prototyping is a very common use case. They're thinking about, I want to build the next generation of airplanes. I want to make it super durable, but also lightweight so it's more efficient. So in the past, I would do physical prototyping, gathering materials, putting the materials together, and then maybe this plane doesn't really work. I'm going to scrap it. That's expensive. So what quantum computing can do is simulate all the factors of consideration, and then the research and development team can then pick out what is the most optimal scenario for them to do physical prototyping. Same thing with medication. So what's the next COVID, or what's the next, disease that we need to solve? And so having those combinations and having those simulations running on a quantum computer allows those scientists to really start thinking about accelerating research and development on medication. So when I say solving a lot of the world's problems, it's not unfathomable. People are doing it already.
What about cryptography? You always hear a lot about and I know we're going to talk about quantum safe here in a few minutes, but again, just practical applications and use cases for quantum, it seems like that would be something pretty rich.
Yeah. So the idea of, I want to separate a little bit because quantum computing has algorithms in place and it's building off of its algorithms. I don't know the science behind that. Yeah. But at the same time, what I do know is that it will break a lot of the encryption algorithms that we already have. So the idea of encryption algorithm, if I was to ask you what's the factorial of 21, 7 and 3, super easy. But what's the factorial of like 2,344,618? I have no clue. A quantum computer would be able to solve that factorization and start breaking that apart. That is a super dangerous thing because cryptography touches everything that we do. And so I want to talk about, quantum computing from the benefits, but at the same time, we also need to think about this from an ethical perspective. What can quantum computing do by breaking out cryptography? That's very dangerous in the wrong hands. And so I know we'll talk about this with quantum safe, but kind of getting into it is IBM is, bringing quantum computing to the world. But on the other side of that coin, we're also thinking about how do we make the world quantum safe? So
can I ask you a question? So the commercial model that eventually gets built, and I'm just going to give you my perception, and this is my personal view. I don't know your market as well as you do. It definitely, there's a computing power. Like you said, people want access to it. Something that seems like what you do in your product management role is not only are you evangelizing the product, but you're actually getting all these questions and bringing them back in to build use cases. So I think it's an exchange.
Yep, absolutely.
Going through that process and being able to kind of understand the business model, I could see 2 or 3 use cases at the highest level right now. Because one would be, we are able to sell a capacity, like sort of like what we do, or supply chain, or on the system side is, as a service. You can have access to us. And I noticed at the beginning of October this year, we did a relationship set up in Germany, different countries, universities. So it seems like a lot of people want access to the capability where they'll probably do their own type of use cases.
Exactly.
And so that there's access. Some of the business problems that you talk about, and again, I'm probably on the business side of this, is like, supply chain problems, that optimization, there's processes and products out there that do supply chain risk management, which is something like you were talking about, where it factors out traffic patterns of shipping and supply chain demands, political, everything. It kind of gives heuristics, but creates a tremendous amount of data. And I think what you're saying is like quantum would be something that could be kind of on top of something like that to even give it a more capability and predictability maybe.
Absolutely.
And then probably the last model, I look at IBM from the big picture. And again, this is public information and it's my personal opinion. It's like, when I look at the financials of IBM, and I know we have a quarterly release coming up, to do this type of research where right now, if you look in our financials, we don't generate a tremendous amount of revenue here yet. And we spend probably about $6 billion a year in research for that. And we're a $60 billion company.
Yep.
So it's a pretty substantial investment. And it affects all the different businesses because, like, for my business, I charge rate per hour.
Right.
And I get a little bit of that $6 billion overhead on top.
Yep.
So, I guess when I think about, like, as a consulting side, like, what would be the best use cases for that? And this is the third scenario, is trying to apply it to real live business problems, but not being overkill. You know what I mean? Because it's so powerful, it may be too much.
Right.
And so again, when you look at the kind of the different models, the university side of this, to being able to give capacity, et cetera, what do you see in the next 5 years for quantum, just directionally?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Let me take a step back, actually.
Sure.
One of the big things I forgot is talking about computing power, and that will lead me into where we're looking for the next 5 years. So when we're typically talking about computing power, we're thinking about GPU and CPU, right? We have a new term called qubits, or QPU. And the idea is that, and just kind of give you an equivalent of what that means, about 10 qubits is the size and the processing power of your at-home laptop.
Okay.
When you get to 11 qubits, you need 2 laptops. 12 qubits, you need about 3 laptops. Now, I'm simplifying the calculations, but it gives you an idea. The impact of qubits is that it is accelerating exponentially. At about 70 to 80 qubits, you're looking at the most powerful supercomputer in the entire world that we currently have
At 80.
today. At about 80.
Okay.
Now, the scary thing is, at 100 qubits, you're looking at all of the supercomputers in the world combined.
Wow.
Currently, our Heron chip, and I might already be outdated, it's about 156 qubits.
Wow.
And in our cryostat, we have 3 of them operating independently. The goal for us is to get all 3 of these chips to be working together, a term we like to call quantum entanglement. To me, that's just a terminology that makes me sound very smart. But reality is, we're trying to get all these chips to work in parallel, but also together. And the theoretical goal is to get us to have over 1,127 qubits by having all of them together. I know that our IBM research team, they're currently in the developmental phase of our quantum system 3, and the goal for that is to have over 100,000 qubits. So where do we see ourselves in the next 5 years? There's a couple of challenges that we first need to solve, or at least get closer to solving. Number one is superconducting. We're keeping our temperatures at about less than 1 degree Kelvin. That's extremely cold. What is the long-term impact and what is the long-term effect? There's a lot of science behind superconducting that we need to think about. The second one is error correction. So when you're processing data, you're bound to have errors. You're bound to have mistakes. Will our system be able to recognize those errors and essentially flip a switch and make it correct, right? And the only way to do that is to really, first, the system needs to recognize that there's an error. The system needs to have more references so it can understand that, something is an error, right? If everything, just color-wise, you have blue, 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 green, blue, 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 then it needs to recognize that, hey, this green should be blue. Just really simplifying that terminology. So those are 2 actually real big things that we need to solve. There's others, of course, before we get to that 100,000 qubits, but will that be solvable in the next 5 to 10 years, actually? I strongly believe that our team has the capabilities behind it. It is still in its research stage. It is still, I believe, in its infancy stages. So it does take a lot of time. And when we talk about that from like a consulting perspective, how do we actually communicate this upwards and say, everything that you're doing on your computer or everything that you can be doing on a supercomputer, these are just bullet point applications in a quantum computer, right? So we had this conversation with like a utilities company. This organization was producing electricity. And they said, hey, we have 500 million users, so 500 million customers that are utilizing electricity. In the past, I would forecast, hey, last year we spent this much kilowatts. Next year, I'm going to produce the same amount of kilowatts and then let our users, use that technology. Well, they're not considering all the use cases, why people turn on and turn off electricity. Is it getting hot? Is it getting cold? Do I buy a Tesla? Am I going on vacation? There's so many different use cases. So our team went with this client and said, hey, put all that knowledge and insight into this software development tool called Qiskit. And then let's run those applications. Let's run those simulations. Look how quickly you can start looking and understanding your clients. You are running 500 million simulations 2,000 times, and then getting data on an hour-by-hour basis. You probably could have done this with a supercomputer, but think about the applications now on such a large scale, it only gets better. And we're thinking about your organization expanding. You're not going to sit happy with only 500 million customers in 5 years. You're going to be sitting at, 100 million. That's lower, a billion.
Yeah.
So we're thinking about that, and we're having those communications with the clients that we speak to. I will admit, we still need to unlock a lot of our clients and kind of have those conversations. And we also need to be a little bit cautious. Not everyone will be using quantum computing. Not everybody will have practical applications. So for IBM, we're not necessarily dialing it back, but we're considering what are real applications that can be applied to and further enhanced in the next 5 to 10 years. As this technology gets better, are our clients ready for it? So we're having those conversations.
So Ray, a little bit of some of the activity that I do on the show is to kind of look at things in the past. I call it building a nation. As part of my series. This quantum computing reminds me a lot of Henry Ford with basically the internal combustion engine, where he was, and they weren't sure exactly how they were going to use it, or even more modern, as you see chip development and, okay, what can we do with this? And then now you look around and you see it's the heart of everything. So I've heard our CEO, Arvind Krishna, talk, his vision of the future and where he sees this thing going. And it seems like we have a critical role, but we're not 100% sure exactly how it will be used. And I think, I think the interesting perspective I have is I also think, and I think it probably more in this terms of cryptology, is, if it could be used unethically down the road to break code, and just imagine all of our stuff now is personally in bank, all of our credit, everything. It'd be very easy if anybody could just go through and just systematically, walk through your all your financials. But I think that what I wonder is, down the road, if, we have to be collaborative to find that optimum use case. And we not only collaborative within our industries within the U.S., but now we're collaborative globally. And I always wonder, is it a national security issue? Where we, eventually, we get a core competency like quantum, let's say, but now we've established it all over the world. So if you look at J.P. Morgan or some of these historic figures in the past, we would spread the technology around, and then that area would become embattled in war, and then that country would try to collapse onto something that maybe was from America, the banking system, the ability to be able to have the power of capital. And so quantum-wise, and again, just it's out there, way out there, but it's just something I do think about is it seems because the future is so uncertain of the potential application, but yet we have all these collaborations. Eventually, IBM is a U.S.-based company. Does it pull everything home? Do we start worrying about it? And maybe this gets into how the federal government gets involved a little bit. Maybe this is a little bit about quantum safe, and trying to see what type of framework or compliance or regulatory activity is kind of put around this to help grow it and make sure it doesn't become, weaponized eventually coming back at us.
Absolutely. And that is a very great concern. That's a very common concern that people have as well, because as I mentioned earlier, decryption, we can't decrypt big numbers, but quantum computing can certainly do so. And that creates a lot of potential risks, right? We want to think about that as well. So I think first, let me say this. The future is quantum. the future is quantum computing, the applications. And we can talk about this towards the end, and I can kind of wow people of what we're really thinking about and the engineering folks that we work with. But the quantum computing is the future, and it's already here, right? So now let's think about rules and regulations. And this isn't just a rules and regulations that is happening right now, right? So 8 years ago, the National Institute of Standards and Technology reached out to all cryptographers around the world. And they said, we need to understand quantum resistance. We understand that this quantum technology can be very beneficial, but also under the wrong conditions, in the wrong hands, it could be very disruptive to businesses. So what can we do? What kind of algorithm, what kind of code can we implement to make our systems more resistant to something like this technology becoming powerful?
And Ray, let me insert here. So NIST, which is the group you're talking about, under the Department of Commerce, and does regulations as cyber, and now it's taking a look at quantum, just to get the viewers a little bit into, that's the federal government getting involved.
Exactly. Okay. So they got 80 algorithms submitted to them, and after a selection process, they selected 4. So that's already, I don't know the percentage, but it's a very low percentage. They're being very selective. Mm-hmm. Now, the surprising fact was, 3 out of those 4 algorithms were developed by IBM research team. Mm. The 4th algorithm, the person who developed it, he now works at IBM as well. So we're really leading the charge when it comes to these algorithm developments. Now, beside the point, the NIST team announced on August 13th, 2024, so earlier this year, they announced 3 of these algorithms that are supposed to help with organizations in terms of security, performance, and help them with digital signatures. Now, people are wondering, why digital signatures? What's the point of that? If a malicious actor was able to decrypt data, such as a financial record, they can actually manipulate digital signatures, which means that if this is a probable reason for concern, imagine going to the bank and the bank can't tell if you signed something on a PDF or if somebody else signed something on a PDF. What if we can't protect our own emails? What's written on the email can be manipulated. Data points, zeros on your financial statements can be manipulated. Bitcoin and blockchain is essentially obsolete. Mm-hmm. These are practical use cases that we see on a day-to-day. So the NIST team said we need to protect this kind of stuff, and so they made those announcements. They made these standards, and governments have reached out already and said, by 2035, you can't work with federal government if you are not quantum safe. That term specifically. And then they said that between 2025 to 2027, all federal governments have 2 years to plan their transformation process. And between 2025 to 2035, we have $7.1 billion that we are offering to federal governments to help them with that transition. So they're really taking a more proactive approach right now to think about quantum safe.
It's interesting is that kind of indirectly through compliance and regulation through NIST and through the charge into really globally, but specifically into the American industry and through the federal government, it actually creates consulting work, which is to help the different departments specifically within the government and then corporations for trying to understand the framework and try to develop. And, I always say, on the consulting side that things kind of follow a cycle, and I'll just use the IBM model of the consulting model is everything starts out in strategy and then kind of works its way into more functional areas like finance, supply chain operations. They have to kind of factor different parts, customer transformation, interaction, UI, UX, and then we kind of end up into the data side and the visualization. And so I think, when industry is looking at this and they're trying to kind of help the government specifically, the strategy part right now is really where the action's at. And I think even then, one of the byproducts of the strategy is use cases that come out of it because they are trying to give a bunch of what if scenarios.
Exactly.
And when you're doing these shows, like even just this week, and you're talking a lot about, the quantum safe, what are the biggest questions that you're getting? Because, quantum safe, to get to that concept, you almost have to make an assumption they got quantum. And in this show, we've done that. We've kind of established the quantum base. You've talked about quantum safe and what it is, but it's a lot for people to digest, and everybody's kind of on a continuum. Like I said, the super informed and the people that are wondering what quantum is.
Right.
So just over this last week, we've been with 30,000 of our best soldier and industry people. What are some of the things that you had seen as observations of questions?
Yeah. Well, the first misconception is actually, if I don't have quantum computing, do I really need quantum safe? And the answer is no. It's two different things, actually. It's two different conversations. It's why I love my job, because it keeps me interested and engaged, right? But the reality is, every organization has some sort of cryptography or encryption, right? If you have a password, you have encryption. So what we really want to communicate is that with the idea of quantum safe is that you as an organization have to understand where your cryptography is first, right? An organization, an enterprise will have thousands of applications. A lot of it is going to be homegrown applications that they developed 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, right? That data could be at risk. And so the first step that we always tell clients is, or we always ask people like at the booth is, where's your cryptography? What are you doing with it? And 9 out of 10 times people will say, I have no idea. I didn't even know I had cryptography. And we talked to developers and they said, we have cryptography. I can't find it because I have thousands of lines of code. So to go back and kind of answer your question, the first question is, what do we do with it? Now, now I see this technology. I thought this was like 30 years from now. What was surprising is last year when we went to RSA conference, people were saying quantum computing won't be ready for 30 years. And this year when we went to RSA, they said quantum computing won't be ready for the next 5 to 10 years. And we were just like, wait, hold on. Yeah. How did we advance 20 years within, in less than 365 days? Yeah. And then now I was on a call with some analysts and they're saying like, we think it's going to be under 10 years. We're looking at 5 to 7 years. And we're just getting closer to the present. And so people are asking, like, this is accelerating so fast. How do I actually go through that transformation? What do I need to do with my leadership and tell them about these challenges, right? And so our first step is going and working with them on planning. So how do you actually plan? You need to identify. So we start scanning the enterprise and we start looking for cryptographic vulnerabilities, and then helping them to guide organizations on those kind of mitigations. Yeah,
it's an interesting issue. Is that I think a lot of people look at this and they're thinking somebody else is doing it. Yep. In the federal government, from my experience, what I see, and I spent 20 something years in the Fortune 500. I think the Fortune 500 looks at the federal government and it's like they're going to take care of us.
And I think the beauty of this is also that, just going back to NIST, now that there are standards, it's almost a catalyst for organizations to get started, right? In the past, they were like, okay, I want to do this. And then we have a lot of forward-thinking organizations and a lot of forward-thinking clients who are thought leaders in this space or in cybersecurity. And they're already saying, like, we understand this is a problem, but, I have 10 other problems I have to deal with first. Let me do that, next year, or let me put that into 2026 planning. And now that there are standards, it's almost motivating for organizations to say, I want to get on this now, right? And so it, again, keeps our jobs interesting.
Yeah. So for you, for the next year, and within your role, any challenges that you see, and maybe just to step back a little bit, is like, you're in the people business too. You've got to build a team. You've got to be able to kind of have people to go out and evangelize like you have. What is the talent pool? What is the credentialing potentially required for people that want to follow into a quantum career?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I will preface by saying, maybe I got lucky because I had no quantum research. Right? I work with colleagues who are physicists or who have done physics degrees or who are PhDs and doctors in this field and incredibly talented. So definitely that's one option. For me, I think it's the persistence of exploring new technology. That's the motivating factor that you need. That's the X factor. I learned about this quantum stuff when I was in high school, maybe college. And it was just one of those topics where he's like, oh, cool. And then you move on. But there are folks who really want to dig into it, right? So I definitely empower, your audience. If they're looking into quantum, do some research. It's there, it's available. Our IBM quantum website has a lot of information and training for folks. But also, I think just think about it from like a strategy perspective. If they're looking for that PMM role, they're looking to be strategic and really focus on less the technology side. There's transferable skills, whether you're in finance or accounting or marketing in cybersecurity like me, I think what makes quantum so interesting is that we're expanding so quickly that we're open to having those types of conversations. And it's not just IBM, it's all of the folks that are working on quantum. I think just have that motivation to look into it. Maybe this year there's not as many opportunities, but definitely, 2025 is coming right around the corner. And I'm very confident that, 2025 is the year of quantum, and beyond, it's just going to get more and more and more. We see the impact that AI has brought. I can't wait for Hollywood to start creating quantum movies and quantum safe movies. Like we're just going to get so much more attention.
Yeah, there's two sides of America that I see out there in this process. Is it's exciting, and then some of look at it as threatening. And I think having you on the show today, I wanted to kind of give kind of a balanced perspective of what could this technology be used for? And I think again, and I do meet the physicists that you're talking about, and I meet everybody in between. And I think in consulting, and I think something that your skill set is really good at is I'm not a developer. I'm not a guy that is going to go and redesign technology. But I do, at a higher level, an MBA type guy, I understand functionally what is the mission of the company, what are they trying to do, or the department, how can I apply different, like a whole bag of different potential process fixes or technologies, and remain kind of agnostic to the solution, but more focused on the business problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's your background. And when you and I've talked, I think that that's what has made you so successful from my perspective is, that you're able to like connect the dots.
Right.
And like I said, you can go hand-to-hand combat with people. When I hear some of the questions, like I said, I'm thinking they're going to get you. And, you've internalized enough to be able to explain it and not get sucked into so much detail. And I think sometimes that's the hard part, even in my side of the business, is we can get really into the detail. And when pretty soon we're lost in the forest. And so I don't
dialing it. But I wanted to kind of interrupt you because I think when we talk about that fear or the potential concerns over things like AI, the one thing I want to leave off with your audience is that the development of quantum safe, quantum computing is proof that human beings are actually smarter than AI. We talk about, talking with these engineers, the last conversation I had with engineers is that if we can solve this quantum entanglement, we can manipulate atoms from across different locations. Atoms are moving forward and backward. We can now manipulate them to move left, right, forward, backwards, up, and down. And I was like, okay, cool. So what? They're like, we can accelerate communication to be faster than the speed of light. So essentially, if a human was in Mars and having a phone call, we can have the same phone call as if me, having a phone call with you. And I'm like, you're saying all this when you're sober. What kind of crazy ideas do you do when you're drinking?
Well, that's funny.
Oh my goodness, you're telling me we can be faster than the speed of light when it comes to communication. We can, you could cure Alzheimer's or just accelerate cancer research with this type of technology. AI can't do this right now. Yeah. Right. And so it's really like there is a concern over what it can do from a cybersecurity risk. And that's what we're trying to educate the market on. But at the same time, you see all of these, really sci-fi applications that are becoming a reality in the next few years or maybe next few decades. But, how quickly things are accelerating, that doesn't happen with only AI. That happens with these geniuses that we talk to. And so, these are it's it's more, for me, it's more of a wow than it is a concern.
Fear. Yeah. Well, Ray, this has been really interesting. And I know the listeners are going to be super fascinated with the different parts of this. I'm hoping that you and I connect sometime on that West Coast because it seems like we're always on the East Coast.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for taking time out of this busy week and coming into the show. And it's always good to see you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks again for joining me today on the Ameritocracy Show. Be sure to follow me on social media and our website at troyedgar.com, where you can get more information and sign up for my weekly email. I hope you have a great week.